everyone, it's time for us to go and take a look at the Nothing Phone 3 and compare it against the Nothing Phone 2 and see which particular device is the better one for you. Now, the big thing I can definitely tell you when it comes down to these two is that the Nothing Phone 3 is going to be a better phone than the Nothing Phone 2, right? The Phone 3 is that latest and greatest, where the Phone 2 is going to be a slightly, older type of device. I feel like both these are good. They have a lot of capability, but we're going to go and kind of see which one is a better one for your particular use case. Now, if you do want to go ahead and pick up some phones that I would recommend buying this year, links will be down in the description below. You can get them from there and you can help support the channel at the exact same time. Now, starting off with the outside of both of these, the big thing you have to remember is that between both, the Nothing Phone 2 did come out about 2 years ago. So even though there's only one generation between these, the Nothing Phone 2 came out back in 2023. So this phone is basically giving you on the front side a 6.7-inch LTPO OLED display. So it's a 120Hz panel. It looks pretty good. And I do feel like if you're going to go through and pick up a panel, this thing is still kind of roughly about the same as the Nothing Phone 3. So with the Phone 2, you're getting, your hole punch display. You're getting a little bit of bezel around it, but it's not anything too bad. But I do feel like the design of this phone, although it's not terrible, it is kind of like a little bit of a generic type of design, right? I feel like when I use something even like a Galaxy S25 Plus or an S23 Plus or 24 Plus, that phone has more character even though it's designed similarly on the front. I feel like this phone has a little bit more protruding bezel around it. It isn't a deal breaker, but I feel like with Nothing Phone, even with the Nothing Phone 1, they really knocked it out of the park with the first design, with the see-through back and everything like that. But I feel like now, even with the Phone 2, I'm already kind of used to seeing it. So I feel like they might need to change this design up, considering I'm already kind of used to seeing Nothing phones like this. With the Nothing Phone 3, this phone is giving you a 6.67-inch OLED display. So this panel size is, slightly smaller than what you're getting inside of the Nothing Phone 2. So this is a smaller size panel, which is kind of interesting, but it's not a big deal. I don't really think anyone's really going to notice, but it is just one of those things to keep in mind there. Now, it is still giving you fairly bright display, still giving you 120 Hertz. So it is a brighter display than the Nothing Phone 2. So that right there is going to be another really cool thing. And definitely, if you're picking up a phone, you're definitely going to feel like the Nothing Phone 3 is going to be giving you a very good type of display. So I wouldn't really look at either one of these as being like super outdated or super crazy, because they're both giving you really good types of panels when it comes down to it. So from that side, I definitely like how both these phones are kind of structured from that side. They're both giving you USB Type-C ports on the bottom, which again is a really nice thing to have. On the back side, just like I talked about in the beginning with, both these phones are basically going to be giving you this see-through glass back. So they call it the glyph interface, and it's kind of this approach of kind of having these see-through lights, and I definitely like it. I think it's a really nice approach by Nothing. It's just an interesting type of design, but I still like it. I think it looks really nice. You're getting your dual camera setup on the Nothing Phone 2, whereas on the Nothing Phone 3, you're kind of getting this triple camera setup. So that is kind of like a little bit of a nicer type of layout there. And like I said before, if you're going to go through and pick up a device, I definitely am a big fan of the Nothing Phone 3, but the Nothing Phone 2 is pretty much the same thing when it comes down the back side, except it basically not having that additional extra camera on the back. So from the exterior, like I said before, I think both of them look great. When it kind of comes down to their cameras though, this is where it's going to be kind of a bigger noticeable difference. The Nothing Phone 2 was giving you this dual camera setup. So 50 megapixel wide and then a 50 megapixel ultra wide camera. Whereas on the Nothing Phone 3, we're now going to a 50 megapixel wide, 50 megapixel periscope telephoto lens, and then a 50 megapixel ultra wide camera. So we are getting kind of that additional, periscope telephoto lens on the back side. So that right there is actually a pretty good change. And even on the front side, we're going from 32 megapixel wide angle camera to a 50 megapixel wide angle camera on the Nothing Phone 3. With that additional, megapixel count, we can now also go from a 1080p front camera to a 4K at 60 front camera on the Nothing Phone 3. So definitely the jump from a Nothing Phone 2 to a Nothing Phone 3, that is a pretty noticeable jump. You're definitely going to be feeling like you're getting a better camera for sure, especially with the additional camera that you're getting. But the problem that we're running into here is that their camera structure, their camera like layout in general, even their like image processing, is not really that great, right? It's going to be a little wobbly. The Nothing phone cameras, in my personal opinion, haven't really been the best. So when you compare it against an iPhone camera, a Google Pixel camera, and a Samsung camera, this phone camera is pretty much in last place. So going from a Nothing Phone 2 to a 3, you're probably going to see some differences, but you'd see a way bigger difference if you go from like a Nothing Phone 3 to like a Samsung Galaxy S23 in my personal opinion. So from that side too, that kind of covers it up there. When it comes down to software longevity, this is also another important thing to keep in mind here as well. So if you're going to go through and pick up a phone, the Nothing Phone 3 is going to be giving you a very long, it's going to be giving you 5 major versions of Android on the Nothing Phone 3, whereas on the Nothing Phone 2, it basically got 3 versions of Android, and I think it's getting 1 more version of Android technically speaking. So it's not really even like, still that much more supported with software. It's probably still going to get like an update or 2, but it's not really going to be that great. So that is also going to be kind of a slight problem that you're going to run into here. It's not going to be the worst performing phone of all time, but it still is going to be giving you some software updates. The Nothing Phone 3 is going to be giving you a much longer software supportive phone from that side. But probably the biggest takeaway here is that if you're going to go through and pick up a phone, the Nothing Phone 2 is pretty much not really that much more supported with software, where the Nothing Phone 3 is still supported with software for the most part. So kind of keep that in mind as well. Their battery sizes are also roughly kind of around the same size, but it was a Nothing Phone 2 4700 mAh battery. The Nothing Phone 3 is now up to 5150. I guess if you get the India model, it's 5500, which is kind of crazy. So you are getting a big jump depending on which model you get. But again, it's up to you. It's kind of roughly the same thing if you just get the international model and the Nothing Phone 2. And finally, when it comes down to the performance, the Nothing Phone 2 is giving you the Qualcomm Snapdragon 8 Plus Gen 1 chipset inside with basically 8 to 12 gigabytes of RAM. Whereas now with the Nothing Phone 3, we're now getting the Qualcomm Snapdragon 8S Gen 4 chipset inside with 12 to 16 gigabytes of RAM. So this is also going to be another one of those kind of big type of differences here, because you are definitely going to be feeling like you're going to be getting an overall better type of performing device, as far as I can tell, on the Nothing Phone 3. This phone is going to be giving you substantially more RAM. It's going to be a much faster, better performing type of device as well. And if you are going to go through and pick up a phone, I definitely do think that the Nothing Phone 3 is going to be the type of device that is kind of going to be giving you an overall better type of performance in my personal opinion. But again, when you're comparing it against like a Galaxy S25 or those types of devices, the Nothing Phone 3 might not be as fast. But if you get the spec'd out model like the 16 gig of RAM option, that is going to be a very, very fast phone. And you're definitely going to be feeling like you're getting a really good type of performing device when it comes down to it from that side. So to kind of sum up this whole entire video, what I can definitely tell you is that if you're going to go through and pick up something like either one of these phones, I feel like both these devices are going to be giving you a very good type of experience. I feel like both these types of devices are going to be giving you a very fast type of device. It's going to look very good, and there's not really too many problems, between them. But I wouldn't really recommend buying a Nothing Phone 2 anymore. With the Nothing Phone 3, I feel like it still is a really good type of device, but it just kind of depends on what you kind of want. Even if you want a more stock Android type of device, I think I still would probably recommend buying something like probably like a Google Pixel 9 or Google Pixel 8. But if you want the Snapdragon chipset, then you'd have to go for a Nothing Phone if you want like that stock Android type of approach. So hopefully that kind of makes sense in this comparison. If you have any other thoughts or questions, please let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that'll mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.